Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another Task 2 live stream. Let me quickly just check the software here to make sure that the live stream is running fine. Okay, and then we'll get started. All right, everything seems to be in order. So what I want to do is the same as last week. So rather than me trying to teach you what to do, I'm just going to let you do it and give you feedback on your work. I think that worked well. And also, as I said last week, I've made lessons to show you what to do, so it doesn't make sense for me to do it again here. Hi, Abdel Momin. Thank you for joining. So rather than me teaching you when I've already made lessons, I'm just going to share you two playlists. There's one there for YouTube and one for Facebook, whichever you rather. And that's everything you need to know about Task 2 condensed into 3 hours of lessons. So it's dense but very informative. Hi Timur, good to see you again. Hi Raja. Hey Sandy. Good to see you too. Hi Arbin. Arbin's always here, the most regular. Okay. Hi Petria. So I'm just going to get straight into it. First thing I want you to do is I want you to paraphrase the question. So don't worry about main ideas, don't worry about paragraphs, anything else. So just for 2 minutes, we're going to paraphrase the question. Here's the question here. As soon as you've written your paraphrase, please share it with me and I'll start giving feedback. Okay, I'll just give you 1 more minute. If we don't have any comments, I'll be able to share what I've written with you anyway. But I would like to see your work so that I can give you some feedback. You have a lack of vocabulary. There is a lesson. Thanks for commenting. There's a lesson in the playlist that I gave you to show you how to overcome that. But of all areas, vocabulary is without a doubt the one that takes the most time to improve. So get started on get started on that straight away, because everything else in relation to writing, everything else can be done faster. Your task achievement score, that's just a matter of understanding what you need to do. Once you understand what to do, you do it. Your coherence and cohesion score is the same. And those are all the lessons that I have for you, showing you how to do what Ielts wants you to do. If you have some grammar problems, again, it doesn't take that long to improve, but vocabulary could take months. if you want to get from a band 6 to a 7, band 7 to a band 8, that could take months. So if you do have a vocabulary issue, start straight away. Okay, Ashan, let's have a look at your work. Some individuals think that schools should teach to their students practical skills. Good. And what Hashan has noticed is that there is an example in this question. So here where it says, such as managing a bank account or car maintenance. So it's an example of what type of practical skills that these people are talking about, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in your paraphrase, and it doesn't necessarily have to be those particular practical skills don't have to be in your essay. Good. Thanks, Ashan. Mona, nowadays it is believed that students ought to study practical skills apart from basic subjects. Apart from would be different. So the meaning of the word apart from, and it's not so much that it's believed nowadays, it's that there's a group of people who believe it. So really nowadays and apart from would be the vocabulary things that you need to work on, and definitely you will need to work on vocabulary. Roja, few people, you need an article, so you have a grammar mistake. So it would have to be a few people, but a few people would mean, like if I say a few people, that means 10 or 20 people. But what we're saying here, when they use the word some, what they're saying is not everybody believes it. That's the difference. When we use the word some, it means not everyone. Whereas when you use a few, it means like a small number. So a few people think that students should acquire practical skills at school, like managing a bank account or car maintenance. Good. So some vocab, some grammar, but overall the meaning is clear. Alda, many suggest that hands-on or lab skills are mandatory. So are means that it's already happening, but it says should. So be careful with that. To be taught at schools such as banking, finance labs, ... as well as basic materials. So hands-on or job skills, obviously you would just write one of those. I think you're just doing that to give me, possible options, but neither of them actually means what we want to say. What we want to say is practical skills. And just copy that word from the question. That's the best thing you can do. If you don't know a synonym of practical skills, your answer would be far superior if you had just said practical skills. And that's something that takes a while to get used to. But not taking risks is very important. So few, Taimur, same as I discussed earlier with Raja, a few isn't suitable. Believe that practical skills, for instance, managing a bank account or car maintenance, as well as traditional subjects, ought to be studied by students at schools. Yeah, besides that, that's a very strong response. Okay, Arvin, this is a bit long. Oh, so you've written the outline. So we're just looking at the paraphrase. Certain individuals think that students should study both practical skills like managing accounts in banks. We would never call a bank account an account in a bank. We would just say a bank account, or car maintenance and traditional subjects. Good. Facebook user, some people, individuals. So we wouldn't use both of those together. So it would be some people or some individuals. Either option is fine. So some individuals hold that schools should study about, so it's not the schools are studying, it's the students. So schools should teach practical skills to students, especially managing a bank account or car maintenance. So it's not especially those things. So the question says such as, so it's not an exhaustive list. It's just two possible, it's giving us two possible practical skills that could be taught, but they're not limiting, the people who believe this, they're not limiting it to those two practical skills. They're saying probably a wider range, or they might have different ideas about which practical skills. But this part of the question is just telling us what does the question mean when it says practical skills. It's just helping us understand the question. So no, when you say especially, that would not be accurate. And Sandy, some claim that students ought to learn not only practical skills, but also traditional knowledge at schools. So the way you've said this, Sandy, is it sounds like they're already studying practical skills. So you're saying not only practical skills, but traditional subjects, but it would have to be the other way around because they're already studying traditional subjects. So not only traditional subjects, but also practical skills. Hi, Fahim. Okay, so that is the first thing that we needed to do. Let me quickly share the paraphrase that I wrote earlier. And I have a full sample answer that I will share with you at the end of the lesson. But this is what I wrote. Some feel that schools should teach practical skills like bank account management or how to maintain a car in addition to conventional subjects. So I think I've seen pretty much all the vocabulary in my answer throughout your answers. So I don't think vocabulary is so much an issue, but just some things to learn in relation to making sure that the topic is exactly what, that the paraphrase has the exact same meaning. Fahim is late, not by much. We've just started. And Pooja, hello there. Okay, so next what I want you to do is I want you to tell me what main ideas can we use. So I don't want you to write the outline statement. I just want the main ideas because I don't need you to write a full outline statement for me to give you feedback on are your ideas relevant, are they specific. All I need is what main ideas are you going to use. Before we look at that, can you tell me how many main ideas do we actually need for this question? Abdel Mumin, I cannot think of a paraphrase of a synonym for practical skills, so I will just use practical skills. Raja, correct? Exactly. To what extent do you agree or disagree? And the answer is 2. So you say I agree or you say I disagree, and then you say why. You give 2 reasons why. Good. Thank you, Sandy. Okay, so with that, please go ahead and tell me what main ideas can we use to develop our answer to this question. So you might have ideas for why you would agree. You might have some ideas for why you would disagree. Either are appropriate, and please let me know which ones you have. Okay, so I'm getting some responses already. If you have not posted your ideas, please continue to generate ideas and post them when you're ready, but I will start giving feedback to those who have shared. Okay. Sir, we have to write both agree and disagree one. No, you would only say one. So you would say I fully agree or I fully disagree, and then you will give the reasons for that. Because we just go for one, will it cut the marks? If just go for agreed one instead of disagreed one? No, definitely you'll get full marks for saying I completely agree, because the question says to what extent do you agree or disagree? So the options are I fully agree, I fully disagree, or I'm somewhere in the middle. But if you say that you're somewhere in the middle, it's very difficult to develop your answer appropriately, because one requirement is that you have a clear position throughout, so that your opinion is clear throughout. And it's much more difficult to say, I kind of agree and I kind of disagree, because I kind of agree because of this, I kind of disagree, and it gets confused, and it's like, well, which one? And it's much clearer if you just say, I completely agree, and then you support that with 2 reasons. So it's a much easier approach. Not the only approach, but definitely the easiest. Broaden the horizon, enhance cognitive process. These are... No, broaden the horizon is too vague. Broaden your horizons is too vague, because how does it broaden your horizons? Now, it's relevant, which is good, but it's too vague. Your idea needs to be more specific. And every time a student has a vague idea, providing it's relevant, like your idea, if I say to that student, how will it broaden your horizons? Your answer to that question will be a specific idea. And that's the one that you would need to use in your essay. But right now, broaden your horizons it's not specific enough. When I read that, I still have no idea what you mean. So just think about that in a bit more detail, and just consider, how does it broaden their horizons? So to think, you need a more specific idea. Enhance cognitive process, that does make sense. And these are obviously because you agree. Okay, so enhance cognitive process. I don't know how you're going to explain that, but it does make sense. Raja, education quality, again, that's too vague. What is better? How is it better to have practical skills in school? So, I mean, let's say I agree, and I say, well, we should include it for education quality. But you could also say, well, I disagree, because it would, weaken the quality or reduce the quality of education. So that could easily be why someone agrees or why someone disagrees. So you need to go a bit deeper than that. At the moment, that's too vague, Raja. Arben, yes. I mean, Ielts doesn't say you cannot do that. There's nothing in the band descriptors that says you cannot do what you've described. But you have 40 minutes, and you're going to write about 280 words. You're not going to develop your ideas enough for a high task achievement score if you try to do it that way. Honestly, just follow the playlist. I sent you a link to the playlist earlier on. If you complete those lessons and follow what's in there, I promise you that's the easiest way you're going to get a good mark. Trying to change the structures that I've suggested is not going to result in a better score or an easier essay or anything. You're making things more complicated with this idea. Timur, it saves time and it saves money. Yep. So you're saying you agree it saves time and it saves money. So those are 2 relevant and specific ideas. Perfect. Good work. And lean to the one that we agree. Again, I know you're just correcting it, but no, that wouldn't work. Mona, increase future job opportunities. Yeah, that would make sense. My initial thoughts would be, if every student is doing it, if every student studies practical skills, I don't see how that would increase job opportunities. So if it was half the students did it and half the students didn't do it, I would see how the students who did it would have better job prospects. But if we're saying every student does it, well then, they still have the same abilities, the same capabilities when they leave school. I don't see how that could be accurate. That doesn't mean that when you're developing your idea, it might make complete sense, and I might think otherwise. But immediately when I see that, I just think I don't see how it would happen. That would be my problem. So your idea is relevant and specific. I can't imagine how that could be possible. Abdul Wahab, I think we will pick a side and discuss. Exactly. Yep. And discuss with 2 ideas. Chung, can we choose one side, give 2 reasons for it? Yep, that's it exactly. Exactly 100%. Fahim, you're very welcome. I agree. Improves the quality of education. Again, I would say that's a bit too vague. Helps to explore the outside world in terms of competition and technology. That I don't understand. So for number 1 is how does it, so it's not just that it improves, but you'd have to say in what way or how does it improve education. So that needs to be more specific, and helps to explore the outside world in terms, I don't understand that, I'm afraid. So possibly accurate, but I currently don't understand it. Okay, Shan, learn how to manage money. Very specific. So remember what we're looking at. Sorry, it's actually too specific. Your idea needs to be specific, but you haven't focused. It's what you're focusing on in the question. So the question is they should study practical skills, but what you've said is they should study how to manage a bank account. So the question isn't should they study this, managing a bank account, it's should they study practical skills. So that main idea is actually focusing on the wrong part of the question. That's the problem there. Fahim, sir, can you take the class on task 2 written part? It looks a little bit easier for me. The chart portion. I'm afraid I don't understand that, Fahim. I'm happy to help, but I'm not clear on that at the moment. Sandy, practical skills can be difficult for them to acquire themselves, and therefore schools should aid students to learn these skills. Okay, good. So you're saying they should. This would be one idea. So it's easier to learn skills when guided by a teacher. Good. And the second idea Sandy has, hang on one second. I agree that students should study practical skills at school because practical skills can be difficult for them to learn to acquire. So that's, yeah, but that's correct, but just one idea. So Ashan, and again, you're too focused on the examples where you need to focus on the idea of studying practical skills. So it could be woodwork, it could be metalwork, it could be, learning how to drive a car, learning how to fix a car. I mean, it's endless. It could be first aid, it could be any type of practical skill where they're not studying from a book, they're studying by, using their hands to do something. Okay. And Abdel Mumin, I totally agree with this statement because practical skills help students involved in the actual work. That's really what that is. That's a description of what a practical skill is, not why they should study it. And it will help them to achieve their dream jobs. That's quite vague as well. Moreover, it will give the students more experience, help them in their future careers. That makes sense. It'll help them in their future careers. But the other one is too vague. And earlier on, sorry, I don't remember the name of the student, said that it will help with their job prospects, or it will help them to find jobs, or they'll find work easier, something like that. That's not the same as it will help them in their future careers. So what this means is they'll be able to do things in their jobs, not they will be able to find jobs easier. So those are different ideas, just in case you think I'm contradicting myself. It will help students in some sector in their daily lives. That's too vague. So some sectors is a very vague idea. too much academic stress. That makes sense. So that is relevant and specific. Good. Okay, Sandy. They meet needs of work and modern life after graduating. They meet the needs of work and modern life. Yes, both of those ideas are good. Yeah, both relevant, both specific. I shouldn't use the word good. There's no such thing as a good idea. There's a relevant idea and a vague idea. There's a specific idea and specific and vague, or relevant and irrelevant. Your ideas need to be relevant. They need to be specific, and these two ideas are. So using the word good is the wrong description. These are both specific and relevant. So prepare them for work and modern life. Okay, good. So I'll just quickly run through the last few. I want to move on to the next part of the lesson. So just very quick bit of feedback on the remaining comments here. Abdul. So that's one idea, and that is suitable. Good. Academic and skill is different. So that wouldn't really be why they should study it. That's more just kind of defining the difference. It can help you to choose your career. That would be good. That makes sense. So you might discover that you prefer working with your hands than working, in an office. So yeah, that makes sense. And helpful for their lives in their adulthood. Yes, helpful in adulthood, definitely. I agree as they would learn actual experience on managing a bank account. Again, too specific. You need to focus on the practical skills in general, not a specific practical skill. I don't think that's relevant, because if every student has the same skills, then they wouldn't have an advantage over each other. So I don't think that's relevant. Learning practical skills from early childhood not only enhances their inner skill, that's too vague, but also makes classes more interesting. Yes, or would make school more interesting. Good. And the last one, we can easily make money if we're able to enhance more of our skills, which is innate in us. Again, for the same reason that I discussed earlier, I don't see this as being relevant. If everybody has the same skills, they don't have an advantage over each other. If only some of the students studied it, that would make sense, but not when all the students are studying it. Okay, so I want to focus on just one. We had lots of ideas for why we would disagree. Why we would agree, but only one why we would disagree. So I think, just to kind of get you in that mind frame of, having to imagine why other people would have an opinion, we're going to go with that. So let's have a look. What would our disagree? So some moment now. We shouldn't study So, sorry, some grammar mistakes there. So this is what I want to focus on. Students shouldn't. Oh my god, it's a tongue twister. Students shouldn't study. Sorry, let me tidy up my screen. Students shouldn't study practical skills at school because of academic stress. Okay. So, and what happened last week, I think I didn't explain it properly, was I want everybody to say just this same idea. We're all going to look at the same idea. How would you explain and exemplify this idea? So don't go developing the idea that you gave me earlier on. Earlier we were just looking at which ideas are relevant, which ones are irrelevant, and we've moved on to the next part of the lesson. So everybody on the exact same page, what I want you to do is tell me, how can we develop this idea? Not another idea, not the idea that you had, exactly this idea. It doesn't matter whose idea it is, just to help us get familiar with how to develop ideas. And remember that the thing is, you have to discuss that topic in the topic sentence. So this would be the first body paragraph. Now, how would you develop that idea? Okay, so as I said, please focus only on that idea, and I'll give you, say, 2 minutes. Okay, so I have my first comment. I'm going to start giving feedback, but like before, you can continue to write your ideas if you're not finished yet. Firstly, Mona, should be disagree one or agree is next. So it's up to you to decide if you agree or disagree. And then once you agree, you give 2 reasons why you agree, or if you decide that you disagree, you give 2 ideas why you disagree. Okay, Ashan. So let me just get that into focus here. Okay. Students shouldn't study practical skills at school because of the academic stress. They have their main academic subjects, and those are very difficult to understand. So that doesn't quite tell me why they shouldn't study practical skills, or it doesn't tell me why the stress should, the idea that there's academic stress is a reason to not study practical skills. So you've told me that those academic subjects are difficult. You haven't told me, you haven't talked about the stress. Maybe you're trying to describe why they're stressed, but I don't need to know why the students are stressed. I need to know, why does academic stress mean students shouldn't study practical skills? So those are the things you have to connect. So I want students to start studying practical skills, but because of the academic stress, you're trying to tell me that it's a bad idea. No, we shouldn't students shouldn't start studying practical skills. How is the academic stress connected to that? It's really important that you stay on topic. Once you decide on a main idea, I realize this isn't your main idea, but once you decide on a main idea, you can't write about anything else in your body paragraph. We said we're going to talk about academic stress. Anything else, anything unrelated to academic stress is not going to help you get a higher score. So if you have main ideas, if you have two ideas that are relevant and specific, you're looking at probably a band 6, but you need to develop those to get a higher score than that. So, if you write about anything but that topic, you're not going to improve your score, your task achievement score. Sandy, many students already have a lot of pressure from their studies. Therefore, regardless of whether what they learn is practical or not, learning more skills can be a burden on them. That makes sense. So they already have enough stress. Don't put them under more stress. Yeah, good. Thanks, Sandy. Sonia, I agree with this idea. Okay, so I'm gonna, sorry, no, I just want to stay going forward in the lesson. I realize you're giving me your main ideas from before, but what I want to do is just focus on this, because the first step, of course, is to generate main ideas, but the second step is to develop those ideas. So what we looked at with, are your ideas relevant, are your ideas specific, that's helping you get to a band 6. What we're looking at now is how to get you to a band 7, a band 8 for task achievement. So how would you develop that idea? Academic stress is a reason to not study practical skills. How can you explain that to me? Mona, many subjects might be difficult and drain students' effort and time. These would be main ideas. So students shouldn't study practical skills because it would be too difficult. It's not a great main idea, to be honest, because that would mean they shouldn't study any subject if it's difficult. They should only study easy subjects. That doesn't make sense. It would drain students' effort and time. Okay, so they would have no energy. It would drain their energy and their time. That makes sense, but those are main ideas. That doesn't tell me why the stress should not, why we should not study them because of stress. So you need to connect those two ideas. Stress, not studying practical skills. How are those two ideas connected? How are those two things connected? So these are relevant specific ideas if they were the main ideas for the question or for our answer. But as it stands, that would have, this sentence does not belong in the paragraph that we're looking at. Okay. Raja, because at that age, students might feel hectic to learn practical skills, and they may lose the spelling of lose interest in education. Again, this is a different main idea. This isn't why stress means we don't need to, or we shouldn't study practical skills. So that this is nothing to do with the stress the effects of stress on students or the effect of stress on our decision whether we should or shouldn't study practical skills. So again, that does not belong in the paragraph. In other words, when a student tries to study practical skills on top of academic studies, they might suffer from more stress as they have to focus on both of them. Good. For example, students in my country who choose practical studies have to spend extra time from their day focusing on those skills, resulting in an increase in their academic pressure. Absolutely. 100%. So if you can just compare, so the students' answers, not just your answer, but the other students who kind of talked about other areas but not talking about stress, what we see with Arbin here, this is 100% saying the stress is a reason not to study practical skills. So not thinking of other ideas like it's a waste of time or it's a waste of energy or it's too tiring or they might lose interest. Those have nothing to do with stress. And that's why I want us to focus why I want us all to focus on the same main idea is you can learn from your mistakes more easily than everybody writing about a different main idea. So what Arbin has here, every part of this is discussing stress. They might suffer more stress because they're studying more. They have to stay later at school, so they have more stress because they're spending more time at school. Everything there is exactly what we're looking for. And what you're doing is you're pushing yourself up towards a band 8 for task achievement. Now, to get that, you would need to do the same thing in the next body paragraph. So it's not enough to just do it in one body paragraph. You need to repeat that performance in the second body paragraph, and you're looking at a really strong task achievement score when you do that. This is to say that staying the whole day in closed classrooms is annoying and stressful. I would delete annoying because annoying, we're not talking about being annoying, we're talking about being stressful. Yep, the other one's good. That makes sense. So you're explaining why they're stressed. If they spend more time, they're already stressed from spending time in school. If they're spending more time in school, they're going to become more stressed. Yeah, that all makes sense. Students shouldn't study practicals. It has to be practical skills. Students shouldn't study practical skills at school because it exacerbates the academic stress due to the fact that practical classes or sessions usually demand more of students' time, physical energy, finances, thereby wearing out more students emotionally. For instance, during school days, we students do spend more and stay longer in school in order to successfully finish up the practical skills. So yep, I would just, in that example, I would at least include the word stress in there somewhere. So you've already said it in your explanation. So you've said spending the extra time creates more stress, and then we have to spend extra time. But better again, if you say that in the example, if you state in the example that results in stress, that would be a stronger example, because rather than leaving it to me to make the connection, even though you've given me all the information, but I had to make the connection. Whereas if you put that specifically in the example, that would be much, much stronger. But overall, that is a good response. So, first and foremost, studying at school will give students a lot of pressure. So it's not just studying at school. Let me read. In fact, practical skills can be learned anywhere, not necessarily at school. That's a different idea. So the first sentence, if you're talking about school, I'm not clear, are you talking about normal academic subjects or if you're talking about practical skills in the first sentence? So that's not clear. The second sentence, you're talking about skills can be learned anywhere. That's not about stress. School is always a place for students to attend academic progress and be forced to pass tests and scores. That's a description of what students do at school. That's not a description of why they should not learn academic, or they should not learn practical skills as a result of academic stress. So you're not connecting those two ideas. Mona, there is an increased percentage of final score failure among students who are studying practical skills. That would be a different main idea. That's got nothing to do with stress. Okay, so again, this is a different topic. Let me just find the ones that are about stress, because I want us all focused on the same idea. Because as we've discovered, some students made some mistakes. They didn't actually talk about how stress is connected to why we shouldn't study practical skills. And then when they see Arben's answer, they can see, okay, that's what it should be. Whereas if you're off trying to discuss a different main idea, you're not going to make the connection as easily. Not that you won't see it, but it won't be as obvious. Okay, so this is an introduction, so that's not relevant. Sir, I got which ideas are specific and relevant, but I have a problem generating it. Some advice. Depends why you're having problems generating it. Sandy and I were working in the other live feedback lessons that I do, and what we discovered was there are always two sides to a topic, and sometimes you just need to look at it from the other perspective. So, like it could be, why are practical skills, you're thinking I agree, so you're just trying to think like, why do I agree? What are two reasons why I agree? But sometimes it's easier to go to the other side and say, well, why would someone disagree? Whether you agree or disagree isn't important. What's important is that you have two relevant and specific ideas that you can use in your answer. So it could be that it would just depend on, it's not that everybody has the same reason why they can't generate ideas, but very often it's the perspective that you're taking. Okay, so that's good. So what I want to do is I want to move on to body paragraph 2. So body paragraph 2 would look something like this. And I'm going to use, again, apologies for not remembering the names. But one of the students said that it would drain the student's energy. So students shouldn't study practical skills at school because it would drain too much of their energy. So like before, here we go. So like before, we're going to think of how can we explain this. So we've already considered, we have our introduction, we have the first body paragraph written. Now we're on to the third paragraph of the essay, which is body paragraph number 2. And we're going to use this idea. So again, like before, just think, how could you develop this? What explanations could you use? What examples could you use? And again, I will just give you feedback on whether your ideas are appropriate, and that will help you to improve your scores. So just got a message here from Facebook user. I just want to talk to you about this because I've seen a lot of this on Facebook, and I wasn't aware of this until quite recently, like how common this is. So first of all, leaked questions, those are not a good way to improve your scores, because A, you're probably not going to get that question anyway, but B, if you rehearse an answer in advance and then you go in, and this be especially for the speaking test, because this is what most of these, um, you know, you would never get the same writing question twice, but speaking questions are reused for about a week or two. So I mean, you could potentially get your hands on a leaked question. That is possible. But the thing is, if you go and you rehearse a speaking question, if you rehearse an answer, imagine how different that answer is going to sound from one when you're naturally speaking. So like if I said, okay, the question is going to be, tell me about, your favorite piece of clothing, and you're going to get that in the speaking test. Now you wouldn't know that anyway, but let's just say you definitely are going to get that question. When you're speaking normally, you would speak with some grammar, some vocab mistakes. You would sound more natural. Your pronunciation would be, the way it normally is. And then if you're trying to say something that you've rehearsed and you've remembered, you would sound completely different. Your grammar would be better. Your vocab would be more accurate. And the examiner would know absolutely straight away. The examiner would see that. So leaked questions would, even A, you're not going to get the same question in the test, and B, even if you did know, it wouldn't help. So I've seen a lot of students do this, where they try to prepare answers in advance, and it's a very difficult way to improve your scores. It wouldn't improve your scores at all. So yeah, be careful with that. I see a lot of that on Facebook, but it's not a good way to. It's not a good way to study. You should just actually be able to do what you need to do. Okay, so Abdel Mumin. Students shouldn't study practical skills at school because it would drain too much of their energy. This is to say that practical skills require physical effort, and that can lead to health issues. The first before the word "and," this is good. So you're saying it requires physical effort. And the connection to health issues it's not like, I would even say it's general knowledge, the general belief would be, if you're doing some kind of exercise, some kind of physical activity, that it's actually good for your health. So I think that connection doesn't make sense. But also, what you're trying to do is, you're trying to tell me why the physical effort. Okay, so the physical effort will make them more tired. It will drain their energy. Yes, but remember, why are we talking about this? We're talking about this because we're saying that's the reason why students shouldn't study practical skills at school. Then again, if it did cause health issues, it would be a good reason not to do it. But I mean, I'm going back. I think I'm wrong. If you believe that, that's fine. If you believe that physical effort causes health issues, that's not going to decrease your IELTS score. So I'm wrong. What I just told you is incorrect. What you've written is factually wrong. But if you believe that, and that's your reasoning, that's actually okay. You don't need to be right. It just needs to follow logically from one idea to the next. So they shouldn't do it because it drains their energy. The physical effort results in them getting sick. Of course, they shouldn't be doing something at school that makes them sick. I take back what I said. Apologies. No, that is okay. I mean, it's wrong, but it's not going to affect your IELTS score. Bless me. Okay, Raja, students don't have experience to tackle multiple tasks. They might undergo pressure which drains their energy. In addition to, they might not take good regular food while they need more physical energy. No, so you can't say that they're not going to eat enough. That's different. That's a completely different topic. So it has to be specifically the problem with doing physical, studying physical skills will drain their energy. Now connect that lack of energy with why they shouldn't do it. So that you started off fine to where you said drains their energy, but why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't they do something that makes them tired? You know, I mean, most parents would want their children to go do physical activity, to get some exercise, to play some sport, to run around, do whatever. So why should they be doing? Why would we want them to avoid that in school? That's what we want to think about. So yes, you've started off fine. You've explained why it drains their energy, but not why that means they shouldn't study practical skills. And the thing about eating food regularly is a different issue. If people are hungry and they're not eating, that's not a reason to not study practical skills. It's probably a reason to give them food or teach them about, I don't know, but it's not connected to what we're talking about. And Ashan, students shouldn't study practical skills at school because it would drain too much of their energy. Practically need to work with big instruments which are too heavy for students that cause them to waste energy. Yes. Okay, good. You do need to improve your vocabulary, but I do understand your idea and it does make sense. So what you've done is you've explained how it drains their energy, but now I need that connection to why that's a reason not to study practical skills. So you need to connect those two things. So now I understand why it drains their energy, but I don't understand why we shouldn't let them, or why we shouldn't start studying these practical skills. Hi, Win. Hello. Okay. And Arben. That is to say, if a student try to add practical skills in their busy academic life, they will have to spend more and more time and focus on it, which might lead to students to drain their energy level. Good. So now we know how it drains their energy. For instance, when I was trying to learn practical skills in my school days, I used to feel a lot of fatigue and tiredness caused due to me trying to learn practical skills. I feel like everybody has the same idea. I don't see. You have to tell me why is being tired a reason not to do something? I mean, like what else would you apply that to? It has to make sense to me. Not, I don't have to agree with you, like we just saw that idea about it makes you unhealthy. I don't agree with that, but I can see where the student is coming from. But I don't see, all of you are saying the same thing. Being tired is a reason not to study. Why not? Why? Like, should people never do anything that makes them tired? Like, in what other situation would you avoid doing something that makes you tired? I don't see. I don't understand why we need to avoid that, and that's what you need to tell me. So you need to connect those things. We shouldn't study practical skills because they make us tired. Why not? I would say that's a good reason to study practical skills, because it's giving you it's giving your body a workout. You're being more active. It leads to you being more healthy. Like, of course, tiredness is a side effect, but I mean, you can sleep, you can rest. It doesn't mean that you have to do it all day, every day. It would just be part of their day. I don't see the connection in any of your answers so far, and it would be very important that you make that connection, because you're not going to push your answer. You're not going to push your score up any higher without doing that. This no, that it's not connected to the question. So what you've done here, you've changed what the question is about. The question is about studying practical skills at school, not an alternative. When would be the best time to study practical skills? So you've changed the meaning of the question here. So you said you're now talking, when is the best time to study practical skills? but there are only two options. What the question has given you is, should we or should we not have practical skills in schools? Those are the only options. Sandy, the acquisition of knowledge requires a lot of energy physically and mentally, and therefore the more students have subjects, the more likely they are to feel exhausted. Yes, so they will be more tired if they study more subjects, but why is that the reason not to? Okay, so I have two more answers. I'm just going to look at these and then we'll move on. Students should not study practical skills because it would drain too much energy. In fact, students will have to focus on academic schedules and frameworks which exhaust students. For example, in my locality, students spend a lot of time going to class, doing homework, followed by passing exams when the practical, they will take a lot of time. Okay, so again, you haven't made the connection. So no, and it's for the exact same reasons we've been looking at. Can we give a contrast in this body paragraph, like whereas a student who doesn't study practical skills won't feel any tiredness as they can get some rest? It wouldn't be strong enough. Losing energy is not optimal idea. I mean, absolutely. Look, if you're not able to develop it, you should not use this. I've forced you to use this idea. And when you're planning your essay, you would not use an idea that you cannot develop. But what we're focusing on here is how to develop ideas. So you're right. You definitely none of the students present today should use this idea. But think of it. Why do we not want students to be tired? Well, my reasoning would be the academic subjects are more important. And if they're too tired to study the academic subjects, their abilities, their skills, their scores, so the academic subjects will suffer if they're too tired from the practical subjects. So that's the connection that you need to make. You need to say why they shouldn't study them in school, not just they'll be tired. What's the consequence of being tired? Well, the consequence of being tired is the more important academic subjects will suffer. They won't study the academic subjects that they need as well as if they weren't doing practical subjects. So that's how you have to connect those things. So that's really important. So the hour is up. I'm going to stay on if anybody has any questions, but let me just share with you. I have free live feedback lessons every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So here's a link to join those. And I have a sample answer that I wrote for you for this question. So if you just click on that link, you will be able to download that as well. In fact, maybe that didn't post properly. Let me just post that again. It seems to have not worked. Okay. So besides that, outside, I can spare 5 or 10 minutes outside of the context of the question that we just looked at. Does anybody have any questions for me, be it about any part of the IELTS test? So, reading, writing, listening, speaking. I'm happy to help you with any of those. If you don't have questions, if you don't have questions, we're finished with this lesson. That's our completed lesson, but I'm just sticking around to answer any questions. So if you need to go anywhere, that's fine to leave. Arben, are the answer and reading section of IELTS General around complex structures? No. There's no such condition as that. No, that wouldn't happen. Mona. Yep, so that would have been the original idea. That would make sense. Good. Ramsha, you have a question? Yep. Absolutely, yeah. Share your question there and I'll answer it. Abdul Wahab, some don't introduce their main points to be developed in the introductory paragraph. Is it also a good idea? No. No, it's not. Because what students do, and I talk about this in the lessons, make sure you complete the lessons because this is all covered there. But what students will do as an alternative is they'll say something very generic that's obviously been learned before the test with the intention of using in the test. So, like, instead of putting in the main ideas, they'll say something like, I completely agree with this situation, and this essay will outline my reasoning behind this idea. It's like, well, you could say that for any question. It doesn't show me, the examiner, that you've understood the question. It doesn't tell me what the essay is about. It's just, it doesn't do anything to improve your score. And really, you need to generate your ideas. You need to plan your essay before you start writing it. So you should have all your ideas in place. If you're writing your introduction before you know what ideas you're going to use, you're doing things backwards, and you're gonna make things more difficult for you. So yeah, good question. Arben asks, sir, will my score be affected if I use because multiple times in speaking section to give a reason? No. But it would depend. Like, no, you can use the word because as often as you need to use the word because. But in part 1 and part 3, you don't really need that many explanations. You wouldn't need to use it that many times, because in 1 and 3, where students go wrong is they forget they feel like they need to continue talking. But in part 1 and part 3, you give your answer and then you stop and you wait for the next question. So in part 2, I could see how you might need to use the word because on many occasions. But in part 1 and 3, you just need to answer the question and stop, and the next question will come. But yeah, a lot of students do that. And what that does is it leads to more mistakes because they don't know when to stop. Then the fluency suffers, and and then they start repeating their ideas. So that affects your fluency and coherence score. It's really important to just stop when you have nothing else to say. So think of what you need to say it, stop, wait for the next question. That's not the case in part 2 because you have to speak for 2 minutes. So certainly in part 2, you could use the word because as many times as you need. But in parts 1 and 3, I don't see a good reason for needing it. Not that you cannot use it, I just don't see why you would need it. Ramsha, while preparing for the Ielts test, which part should I start with? I mean, speaking, listening, writing, or reading? I've started with speaking. It depends if you've done the test before or not. If you haven't done the test before, I would say start with speaking or writing, because they normally take longer to improve. They normally take students longer to improve. But 9 times out of 10, the reason that it would take student longer than they expect is because they don't have the vocabulary level that they need. And that takes time and dedication. And that's in fact where most IELTS students will quit before they get their score, is they've got a vocabulary level of 6 and they need a band 7, or they have a vocabulary level of 7 and they need a band 8. That's a lot of work and a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of time. And that's generally, students will quit because how much work it takes to improve vocabulary. So besides which part of the test you should start with, more than anything would be study vocabulary. Even if you're already a band 7 level and you need a band 7, more vocabulary is not going to weigh you down. It's not going to prevent you from getting a higher score. So I would say whatever you're working on, if you're studying 4 hours every day, give 2 hours to vocabulary and then 2 hours to speaking or whatever other area. But yeah, it's really, really important. Vocabulary, more than anything, is what slows down, is what delays students from getting the scores that they need. I've worked with many, many students who've got everything else in order, but it's that the time and the effort and even when you're making progress with vocabulary, it feels so slow. It's very difficult for students to stay motivated when they're studying vocabulary. So definitely vocabulary is a big one. Sir, can you do writing task 1 question? I already do in my live feedback lessons. They're free as well. And you'll see the link that I posted there a few minutes ago. But yeah, I already do. You can come along and join those. Writing task 2. If we followed the structures and made a relevant idea and developed it, however, we used simple vocabulary and not advanced words, it will affect our score band badly. But they're different scores. So when we're talking about development of ideas, that's your task achievement score. So your task achievement score will not suffer because of your vocabulary. Those are marked separately. You get different scores for those things, but you're not going to get the score you need by having, like if you need a band 7, you should be getting band 7 for task achievement, coherence and cohesion, vocab, grammar. So those 4 should be band 7, not you got vocab and grammar kind of down at a 6, and then you're kind of hoping maybe I'll be lucky on the day. It doesn't happen. If you need to improve vocabulary, you should actively study vocabulary. There's no way around it, unfortunately. Strategies for reading types. I will definitely get there. Yeah, it is my intention, for sure. But I will just give you the keynotes for reading. Do a practice test. Only use Cambridge IELTS books because those are the ones that are written by Cambridge and actually reflect what the test will really be like and help you to understand what score you will actually get. So use Cambridge IELTS books. When you're beginning, do not study under exam conditions, because if you're studying under exam conditions, you're not giving yourself a chance to discover how to, answer the questions, how it works, get used to the format. So if it takes you 3 hours to do a reading test, that's fine. The next step, focus on all the incorrect answers you got. So if you got 30 questions right and 10 questions wrong, you don't need to look at the 30 you got right. Your focus is on those 10. Why did you get them wrong? What did you do wrong? What was the mistake? Was it a weakness? Was it you weren't careful enough? Was it you didn't read the sentence carefully enough? Was it a piece of vocabulary that you didn't know? Could you have guessed it from context? Where did you go wrong? And then you'll have 10 mistakes. You'll understand your 10 mistakes. And with that information, it might be you need to improve your vocabulary, or you might need to do something differently in the next reading test that you do. But that's how you improve. Take your time. If it takes you 5-6 hours to do a reading test and analyze your mistakes, that's fine. What you need is the information. What did you do wrong? Take action on those mistakes and then go and do another reading test. What students do over and over again is like they'll do, 10 Cambridge IELTS books, they'll do 40 reading tests to say, I'm still getting the same score. Well, it's because you're still making the same mistakes. You need to find your mistakes and improve them. For reading and listening, it's the exact same. Figure out what you're doing wrong, take action so that you don't repeat those mistakes. That's how you improve your scores. There are strategies for the different reading questions and the different listening questions, but more than anything, it's figuring out what you did wrong and using that information to your advantage. Any tips for listening multiple choice questions? Yes. It's usually the long ones that mess with students' ability. So like there are multiple choice questions where there's, in total maybe like 2 words in each option. And then you have multiple choice questions which are like maybe like 8 or 10 words in each option. And what happens there is students don't have time to read them. And then the audio starts and you're trying to read it, figure out what are the keywords, listen for the synonyms, and it's too much to do at the same time. So if that's what you're talking about, is those longer multiple choice questions, prepare for those first. So you've got 30 seconds to prepare for those long multiple choice questions. Even if the first set of questions are different type, go straight for those longer multiple choice questions, prepare for them. And then when the audio starts, it'll be easier to prepare yourself for the shorter questions at the same time as listening to the audio. Now, ideally, you will have prepared everything in advance, and you don't need to start with the longer multiple choice questions. But that's not the issue that students face. In general, the issue that students face is the audio started, I'm only halfway through the questions. Now I have to focus on the questions. When I get to the multiple choice questions, it's like half a paragraph I need to read while I'm listening. It's too much to take in. So really preparing for those in advance is the second best option. The best option is prepare for everything. Second best option is at least have those ones prepared before the audio starts. Long multiple choice. Yeah, those are the ones. Those are always the ones that trip up students for sure. Sir, I need to pass IELTS in writing. Need your advice? Yep. So definitely 2 things. Complete that playlist, all those lessons that I sent at the start. That'll take you 3 hours. Join my free live feedback lessons. That'll be 3 free lessons a week. Continue coming to this. That'll be 4 free lessons a week. I'll give you feedback, what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. Carmina, one thing though is I didn't see any of your answers today. So you will learn, of course, looking at other students' answers, seeing what they're doing wrong, understanding the mistakes. That's important. But better again would be you share your answers. And look, if you get everything correct, you don't need to be here. If you get everything correct, you need to go do the IELTS test. So don't worry about making mistakes. Just come along, share what you have. I'll tell you what you're doing wrong. You'll use that to improve. Hi, Ala. Nice to see you again. Okay, so that seems to be all the questions. We'll finish up there. We'll finish up there for this week. Again, I'll be back another live stream next week. And if you want more feedback, do come along and join the live feedback lessons. The link is there. And take a look at that sample answer that I posted as well. Okay, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye, everybody, and have a good week.